Mere conservatism.
I want to break some good news to you. You will appreciate this, especially
I love good news.
With your expertise in the housing market and things of that nature. The good news is, despite the report about us going back GDP-wise, so what was it,
0.9%.
Yeah, we're not in a recession.
Oh, we're not.
What, you didn't get the memo?
I think I heard that they changed the definition of that.
We certainly have. The compliments of the White House. A recession no longer means, 2 quarters of negative growth.
It has been 2 quarters of negative growth for decades and decades and decades. This is the definition that everybody has been told. This is what defines a recession. This is the signal that we know we're in one. The economy is shrinking. But no. Now the White House says, we'll tell you when we're in a recession. Don't worry about it. All this stuff that happens, it doesn't mean anything. We're in a recession when we say we're in a recession, and we say no recession.
To his defense, when President Biden heard the news about the GDP report, he did say, well, coming off of last year's historic economic growth, and after regaining all the private sector jobs lost during the pandemic crisis, it's really no surprise that the economy is slowing down as the Federal Reserve does things to bring down the inflation. Mm-hmm. So he...
Well, which is basically true. I mean, look, we're in a situation with extremely high inflation. It's record inflation. It's outpacing wage gains. It's a real problem. Well, the Fed is having to raise interest rates to rein that in, and this is what happens when the Fed does this. The GDP decreases. The next thing we're probably going to see, unfortunately, is all this. The great unemployment numbers and all the job growth they've been touting is going to slow down, and we might see an uptick in unemployment. Because this is what happens in this type of environment. Well,
even the so-called great low unemployment numbers were basically due to the low labor participation rate, which also is going to be increased and exacerbated under a recession. You were one of the first people that brought this out to me, David, and I want to bring it up, giving you credit for it. You said that one of the things that the progressives are really doing most and are best at doing are redefining terms. And things that you and I thought had a meaning on one instance, they have been very successful saying, no, this is what it means. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that.
And I think, it's been actually a theme of this program for many years. Early on, when we discussed what the left was doing, we talked a lot about the importance of language and how words matter. The things
I remember
you say
it like
matter,
yesterday. Yeah.
And the definitions of these words matter. And when the definitions shift, you can no longer nail down any meaning. There's no longer truth. You can't actually accomplish anything because words don't mean anything anymore.
Or they mean only what one side wants them to mean. They do have a meaning.
And they can change.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening here with this word recession. They have decided to change the operating definition of this word for their political gain. Basically, they're trying to whistle past the graveyard of the issue with this economy. Now, if they were honest people, Cleve, they would say, it's a recession, but it's a shallow recession. Notice we had barely over 1% shrinkage in the first quarter. The second quarter was 0.9%. It's a very shallow recession. We can come out of this. There's a lot we can do to fix this, and we're going to fix it. They could do that, but they're so dishonest. Instead, they're going to say, oh, nothing to see here. This is actually not a recession. We're going to change the definition of a recession basically to be whatever we say it is.
Well, see, I predict, though, they're going to actually say all of the above. They're going to say, no, it's not really a recession as we normally understand recessions because these particular stats and factors are not. And they're also going to say, but even if it is a recession, it's a shallow one, and, we're going to deal with the inflation. We're taking action. So they're going to say anything and everything necessary to mollify the public.
I think you're right, but I think one of their problems, Cleve, is that they could fix this.
Of course.
But they won't. And that's one of the reasons they have to redefine the term recession, is because they could correct this. In fact, they could have prevented all this. They could have, all the way back to when Joe Biden's presidency ended, which is when the withdrawal from Afghanistan happened, starting then, it has been a domino effect of bad decisions, bad policies that have negatively affected our country and the world, and they could have prevented all of it. And at any moment, they could have course-corrected this stuff, but they're not going to.
And why are they not doing it, even if they could?
Because they're worshiping at the altar of leftism. This is their religion. They are not. This is not meant to be effective the way we understand political policy to be effective. This is totally different. It's a religion for them. They have a cause. It's leftism, and they're pushing forward. So instead of course correcting and fixing this problem that they have, they're just going to redefine the terms so that it doesn't seem so bad to people and that it's more palatable. And a lot of people are going to buy it.
Well, here's the thing. Again, they are redefining the terms, but the progressives literally want these problems to exist that are existing. The problems with high gas prices is something they wanted to happen. And, of course, that's exacerbating all of our economic issues. They need these negative things to happen. They just don't need for them to be called negative things. Okay? If you don't have enough power to power your AC, if you got to have rolling blackouts, they want those things to take place, but you're not supposed to take notice of them or call them a problem. And the media, by the way, is already trying to circle the wagons and kind of help redefine, go along with these redefinitions. So
yeah, it's supposed to be good. And they want to establish a new normal.
Right.
I mean, Obama wanted to do this too. The new normal was supposed to be very, very anemic economic growth. 1% to 2% per quarter.
Even made fun of Trump for suggesting it could be anything other than that.
Right. And it was going to be extremely small growth, barely, if at all, outpacing inflation. Inflation is supposed to be, the target is supposed to be something like 2%. Well, Obama wanted to manage this economy to the point where it grew very slowly, about the same amount as inflation. It's a managed decline is what they're going for. Obama, we said many times in the past, Cleve, one of his goals as president was to knock the United States down a notch.
Right.
And Biden is the third term of Obama. I think that he's doing something very similar. They might think they're saving. They might think they're saving the world. I don't know if they think that. I don't know if they just want to knock the U.S. down a notch like Obama did. But they're doing a terrible job. They're so inept. They're so bad at this that, Cleve, it actually gives me hope because, look, I'm not the smartest person in the world.
I would agree with that.
But thank you. But if Biden and Kamala Harris can be president and vice president of the United States, if those people can basically be the most powerful people in the world, I think that I should be able to accomplish something worthwhile in my life. So I think this is actually a feel-good story, Cleve.
Well, yeah, depending on one side you're feeling good about. So anyway, we're in a recession, and my prediction, unfortunately, is the recession will deepen. Okay, because they're not going to do anything in reality to help the economy recover from recession. Everything they do is recessionary. Their policies and their beliefs, as you just explained, will produce these bad economic conditions, and they're going to continue to do what they're going to do.
There are big companies, huge companies in our country that are suffering losses, and they're responding with layoffs. I mean, this is happening right now. I'm talking about like Microsoft and Tesla and Google and all these companies. Apple, there is an issue happening. Earnings are not coming to fruition. And so this is absolutely an economic slowdown. The next step is probably some job loss. I don't know. I imagine that the job loss we experience in our country, and this is just me guessing. I'm not an economic expert or anything like that, but I think it's going to be in certain areas.
Okay.
And I think technology is going to be one of those areas that there will be job loss. I don't think it's going to happen in like service industries and supply chain industries and stuff like that. Maybe some financial services, but probably not. It's probably mostly going to be these big companies that are bloated and are.
I just know that things have a way of trickling down into other sectors that are not directly impacted by it.
It will to an extent, yes.
So it's not going to be good. Now, the reason I know the Democrats are going to make it worse, Senator Joe Manchin, erstwhile the hero for many of us on the right, on the conservative side, announced this past Wednesday that he has come to an agreement with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on a reconciliation bill after more than a year of negotiations. And it's now, according to Schumer's and Manchin's office, David, the bill will raise $739 billion in revenue through IRS tax enforcement. And also the corporate minimum tax and the closing of the interest loophole in the taxes. So it will spend $433 billion total, they say, on energy and climate change provision and on the ACA extension. So my point is they're going to spend a lot less.
Increasing taxes.
Yeah. Now, and to me, one of the worst things you can do in the environment that we are in right now and entering into with the official recession, it's a tax increase. But doggone it, and the only consolation is, hey, well, at least it's not going to be as big as they want it to be, and at least it's not going to
And it's going to be on corporations. At least that's the way they make it look. But, of course, we know that corporations they actually pay zero taxes. They pass that on to consumers.
Which they should, by the way. I mean, they're not in the business of being a social service organization. They're in the business for profit. So when something takes away their profits, like increased taxes, guess who gets that passed on and gets to enjoy, again, increasing
you and
prices?
I.
Yep, me and you. It's like I said, everything they do to fix the problem, and they're saying this will fix the inflation problem, this package. So I throw it out to you.
Maybe it will help. It
won't.
Here's the thing about the economy and the inflation. There's no way out of inflation without pain.
Mm-hmm.
There really is not. There's too much money in the economy.
Because you got to slow down the economy. You have to literally do it.
Because inflation is too much money chasing too few goods.
Compliments of the Democrats.
This is exactly what inflation is. So what happens when there's a worldwide pandemic and the supply chain shuts down or it's slowed, causing less product to be available on the market, and at the same time the government dumps money in the pockets of people, some of it necessary, you and I agreed with, but at some point it became very unnecessary to just send people checks.
The point where it discouraged people to go back to work.
So you already have a supply chain issue caused by COVID. Now you have tons of money in the economy. This is the direct cause of inflation. It's too much money chasing too few goods, and it is a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because you have scarcity and all this stuff. They have caused this by sending money out. Now, they didn't cause the pandemic. China did that. But they have made this problem much, much worse. And if they're going to tax corporations and things like that, the idea could be that they're going to use that to suck more money out of the economy, and it might help. But I'm sorry, it might help a little bit, but that's not the main driver of what's going on here. The way that they're going to do this is, unfortunately, the Fed raising interest rates.
Anything they do, and a lot of this money they're supposedly going to raise from these taxes will go ostensibly toward climate change. Anything they do for climate change is a waste of money, which is going to increase the problem. Okay.
Yeah. Now, there are things that you could do for "quote unquote" climate change that would not be a waste of money.
And they're not going to do it.
Those aren't the ones they're doing. They're not putting the money towards nuclear power. They're not putting the money towards even like carbon recapture technology and stuff like that. Not that I know of. I haven't heard anybody talking about producing technology that actually sucks carbon out of the air, if that's what they're so concerned about. They're not going to put it towards other mitigation things like building seawalls and stuff like that. If they're worried about rising sea levels, they could do that kind of thing. No, they're going to spend it on solar.
Right. And the thing about it is parts of Europe, Germany, and other countries are, Switzerland and also is getting hurt, who have embraced this climate change agenda. They're hurting so badly that many of them are returning to the use of fossil fuels because they got to keep the thing going for a while.
What we need to be doing, if you're worried about the climate increasing, is preparing for the effects of that. Like I just discussed, the thing is. By the way, it's going to happen no matter what the United States does, because China and India are still pumping carbon into the
atmosphere. That's the problem.
So the things that we do aren't even going to matter. So we're only hurting ourselves here. And what we should be doing, if we're concerned about these effects of the temperature going up by 1 degree in the next 100 years, then prepare for that to happen, because it's gonna. Yeah. Instead of undercutting our entire economy and sending us back to the Stone Ages and letting China maybe take over the world in the meantime.
And Russia's not doing very badly either. As a matter of fact, they're fuel-wise doing everything much better than we are. So, again, it's their agenda, and the aim of their agenda ultimately is a globalized economy, a globalized government, and so you need climate change, you need pandemics to get the ability to declare global emergencies, which WHO, by the way, has already done for the monkeypox. And
that monkeypox thing drives me crazy.
And why does it drive you crazy? Because it drives me crazy for a different reason than most.
Because they're lying about it.
Well, of course.
That's what they do. They're leaving out the details that, why don't they say, hey, you know what? Just to flatten the curve, we need to stop with the gay brothels for just a little while to flatten the curve. No, they're not saying that because they don't want to stigmatize people.
But that's where that's the high percentage of where this is coming out.
Yes, promiscuous.
They can't talk about that though.
Is what is the cause of this? So can you please just keep your pants on? And this would stop the issue, but they don't say it, and that's because it's all political, and that's what bugs me. The COVID thing was political. This is political. They care more about hurting people's feelings or stigmatizing certain behavior than they do about the truth.
It's not just promiscuous activity. It is a specific kind of promiscuous activity.
Right.
It is men having intercourse with men, and in their settings, whatever you want to call it, their brothels, whatever, and that is a fact.
Yes,
not like any disease, it can break out beyond that, but that's where it is starting, and they can't talk about that.
That's the vector. That's the problem.
Yeah, right.
And you're right. It can jump and be in other places, but if you stop that, if you stop the source, you'd stop it all. But they're not clear about that,
no.
And it's so frustrating, Cleve. These are people that are supposed to guide the world and be experts at this and help us have a better world, more healthy and all that stuff. But no, it's more about an image.
Yeah. It's a narrative.
It's a narrative.
Yeah.
It's more about an image, and it's frustrating because the truth is such a distant consideration to them.
Well, let's be honest here. Progressivism and the global elites, they think the same thing, and that is this. It is going to be a better world, but it's only going to happen after a time of suffering, and again, not for us. Suffering not for me, but for thee. So if you can just wait until the suffering part, the pain part passes, you'll appreciate the global utopia that will come out of it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is they've already figured in the pain. It's that they just got to find a way to describe it so you don't see it as what it is. You go through the pain. We who are engineering all this, bringing you to a better life, we will be immune from it. But you go through the pain, in the end, you'll thank us for it.
And they're so worried about these marginalized groups. And that's social justice is their main concern. And it never crosses their mind, Cleve, that maybe promiscuity in same-sex bathhouses should be marginalized.
Yeah, no more.
You should. Yeah. Look, it's not good for people to do stuff like that, but you're not allowed to say that anymore.
Well, a little feel-good story for me. Georgia and South Carolina and about 20 other states are banding together suing the Biden administration over the latest effort to force public schools to make accommodations for transgender and marginalized students, not with just bathroom facilities, but also including language and policies and everything else with the schools that will keep them from being marginalized. And so these states, Georgia and South Carolina, the states you and I live in, and 20 others, are taking this to the court.
Yeah,
and as well they should, because again, I'm telling you, this is one of those places where we have to draw the line. And it also, and I hate to put it in political terms, it's also a very strong political point for Republicans coming up in the midterms.
It is, and it's very frustrating because, look, we have a cold civil war going on in this country.
We do.
We've talked about it many times.
It's obvious now. Yeah, it's out there.
We have conflicts around the world as well going on. So we've got a war in Ukraine. an aggressive Russia. We have China, very aggressive in the region, threatening Taiwan, threatening Japan. We've got North Korea, who does launches every now and then. We've got Iran trying to get a nuke. We've got Israel under threat. We've got food shortages looming. And you would think that with all this stuff going on, maybe we could put the pronoun issue to the side for just a moment. Could we just set aside for just a second the issue about which pronouns to use for people so that we could actually handle some of this stuff? But no, our government is so focused on this, and it's a religion, Cleve.
It is, and therefore it does not have to make sense.
They're so focused on this the world is burning down around us.
Yeah.
While our vice president is going, I'm she, her, wearing a blue suit, sitting at a table. I guess she was doing that for maybe somebody who's visually impaired or something like, I don't know. But the pronoun thing is, look, can we just hit pause on that for just a second while we actually deal with real, there are actually real problems in the world. There are people in this world that actually have real problems.
But you're not listening to the programming. The programming is, yes, there are real problems, and we're telling you what the real problems are. And the real problems are marginalized identity people and LGBTQRX people being talked bad about, having their feelings hurt, and therefore that's the huge problem.
Because I don't think that trans people exist, they would say, and that makes them want to hurt themselves, or we have this guy who dresses up like a woman, who's an admiral. I forget his name. Yeah, admiral, and he's out there saying, first of all, we want to normalize and empower kids to be transgender, to shift their gender, which is child abuse, which is it's butchery,
in our opinion,
and it's terrible.
Yeah.
He's out there lying, saying that these people that have these conditions, they're not predisposed to suicidal ideations. It's the bullying that does it. That's not true.
No,
it's not true. They lie so much about it. There's so much gaslighting going on from this admiral to the recession talk to everything else. It's so dishonest.
They silence anybody else who says differently.
They're bold in their dishonesty.
Yeah, they silence anybody else who says opposite to what you say. I mean, differently to what they are thinking. In other words, the military brass can't say what you just said, but I believe they feel that way. And in corporations, they have people who can't say what you just said, even though they feel that way. Mm-hmm. So they have been very strong in canceling out. And again, it's only when people get enough and say, no, you will not cancel me out. And even people like Dave Chappelle and others who are standing up for free speech, that this is coming out to the light, that what they're saying is, I insist that you march and speak in lockstep with what you just described as their priorities.
Well, we're in deep, Cleve.
Yeah. But we got to stand up. But we got to stand up. We cannot allow, I say this again, especially to the American church, we cannot be silent on these issues. We cannot say, David and Cleve, that's in the political realm, and that needs to be sorted out there. Baloney. If truth is not truth in every circle, we can't have different truths for the church circle and truths for the political, different truths for the political service. If truth is truth, at some point, David, we're going to have to say, no, that's a lie, and we cannot allow that.
I agree, and Cleve, and when we say that the church and Christians need to stand up and speak out about these things, we're actually not talking about the tax cuts.
No.
I don't even care about the taxes compared to this other stuff.
Right.
Okay, this is... when it comes to this transgender issue, especially, this is the truth is on the line here. And reasonable people can disagree about taxes, and I have my opinions on that. But I'm not saying that the church needs to speak out about taxes. I'm saying the church needs to stand up for God's creation and the created order and the truth, and
because it's not just religious truth. It's not just religious truth. It is truth. Now, even on a tax issue, though, and this is going to blow your mind, I take issue with that because they want to use my money my money in their taxes for causes that I find to be ungodly. For example, they want to give Planned Parenthood tax incentives and money from taxes that I pay to kill babies. So to that extent, even in the tax issue, there's something that we got to stand upon.
There is something, and we need to remember as Christians too that our command in Scripture to obey the government is conditional. I don't think a lot of people like to think about this or even agree with me on this, but they can be wrong if they want to. The Bible is pretty specific about what a just government and a government that Christians ought to submit to should be like,
right,
and what it should do. And one is doing justice and
they're doing
punishing evil,
yeah,
and rewarding good.
Yeah.
And you have to start to think about where our government is. I mean, we have been teetering on the edge of being a legitimate government, in my mind, for quite a while. And so I think Christians, we have to take stock and try to figure out. This probably sounds very, very much like a Christian nationalist, doesn't it? But we actually need to think about our nation and whether or not we are a country that God would have us submit to.
Yeah.
Or not.
Right.
We need to think very seriously about that.
I just believe there's a tipping point, and I don't know when that is with God, because I don't have God's mind on those matters. But there's a tipping point. We cannot constantly presume that God will have mercy on a nation that continues to literally throw back his commandments in his face.
Yeah. Well, I think about Lot and Abraham, and God, can you find 10?
Yeah, I remember that.
And
reading that the other day.
And maybe that's what's keeping us from being destroyed by fire right now.
We don't know, but we do know this. We're the time now to stand up with the truth, stand up for our families, understand that at risk right now are our little children. Their innocence is the thing that this culture is coming for right now. And if for no other reason, at least stand up for them. David, great conversation again. How can folks hear this again at their leisure if they would like to?
You can check it out on Apple Podcasts, the app on your iPhone. Find us on Facebook, Mere Conservatism, YouTube. Just search for MereCon Media or MereCon Podcast, and you will find us. Also on Spotify and all that good stuff.
We ask you to continue to pray and vote, by the way. All of that, I think, is a Christian obligation. David Perry and I'm Cleve Walker, inviting you to join us for another edition of Mere Conservatism. Meantime, keep the faith.